Hello everyone, you are listening to the Eiffel Tower podcast. My name is Oliver G. This is a show all about Paris, and if it's your first time here, maybe you're one of those people that have chosen here to begin your journey with the Eiffel Tower, then let me give you a little bit of background. Every week, I find someone interesting in Paris, talk to them for just over half an hour about their life, about Paris, and a little bit extra, and then I put it out as an episode every Monday morning, and I've been doing it for 2 years. Today's guest is one of my favorite. It's pastry chef, blogger turned author, Instagram legend. I'm serious actually, this guy's very good on Instagram. If you haven't followed him, do it right now. His name is David Lebovitz. David Lebovitz, he's an American from San Francisco in Paris. He's been here for ages, long enough to know better than most of us. His new book is called Drinking French. Now let me just stress this to you. This is absolutely not a cocktail book. There's everything in it. There's coffee, there's hot chocolate, tea, mint syrup, apéritifs, all that kind of stuff. You'll hear somewhere in the middle of the episode, I sort of say to David, is this just another cocktail book? And you should have seen his reaction to it. You might be able to hear the astonishment in his eyes. That's how loud it was. But it's in all seriousness, it's more than just cocktails. It's all sorts of French drinks with the stories behind them and lots of fun observations on French people. I've got a copy. It's great. You should get it too. Drinking French. Find it on davidlebovitz.com. But before we get into that interview and before I say a little bit more about it, this show, this whole season where I'm going through all the arrondissements, this whole season is brought to you by My Private Paris. They do boutique tours, custom tours all over the city. I asked Bertrand, who runs the company, I said, can you explain the 11th arrondissement to me? Because in this season I'm going through all the districts of Paris. We're up to 11. David's going to talk about the 11th as well. This is what Bertrand said to sum it up.
The 11th arrondissement is the one arrondissement you go to if you want to find alternative shops, alternative restaurants, grocery stores, bakeries, record stores, etc. It's the one where you will find this wave of new way to conduct businesses. You can buy a freshly made soap at Le Baigneur. You can go to a cooperative supermarket, which is called the 400. You can go to amazing clubs like the Badaboom. It's the alternative spirit in Paris.
So if you hang around at the end of the episode, you'll hear Bertrand and me in the studio talking about the courtyards that are all over the 11th and how to find them and how to just walk straight into a courtyard like you own it, and a few good ones to check out. He also brings in, I'm not going to spoil it, but a special kind of pastry, and I just, having listened back to it, I'm a little bit harsh on him, saying that it looks like a donut, but it was all in good humor. Okay? Believe me, we're friends. But to David, this podcast interview, we recorded it in his kitchen, so don't be alarmed if you hear kitchen noises, if you hear motorbikes going past his house, if you hear sirens in the background. It was me and him sitting in his home, which was the star of his book before that, L'Appart, which was a great book. Now, if you want to hear more from David, like I said, follow him on Instagram, subscribe to his newsletter, davidlebovitz.com, and check out the videos and the podcast episodes that he's done with me on the Eiffel Tower. But for now, I'm going to take you to the 11th, me and David talking about his new book and the neighborhood. Let's get into it. David Lebovitz. Did I startle you?
No, I've been on the show a few times, and you always pronounce my name correctly. You don't have a problem with it.
What do other people call you? David Lebovitz?
Well, in French, they always think I'm German, so they call it Lebovitz. And they have a little trouble. So it's interesting when people say my name correctly.
It throws you off.
Yeah, and I don't correct people because they don't correct
You're too polite, David. We go way back. We go way back on the Eiffel.
We go way back to when you were up in the 18th or 19th.
I was thinking about that the other day.
Yeah, and you didn't have any facial hair.
Really?
And I think you were just going through puberty. And so
I remember that. I was thinking about that.
I think.
Maybe, actually. Yeah. It was a while
Your voice
back.
was changing.
I remember I emailed you, and I just started out, and I thought it was great that you were coming on the show. I was quite excited. I am today as well. But I remember I texted you the address, and you texted back that you I don't know if you were lost or something, and I thought I'd sent you to the other. So I googled what I'd sent you, and it looked like I'd sent you to far northern suburbs of Paris. And I was sitting there like, oh my god, I've wasted David Lebovitz's time. But you were there.
Okay, I made it, yeah.
And then
I'm always here. Prompt. Bakers are always prompt.
Yeah,
so and
very precise too, huh?
Yeah. Well, not super precise, but we're on time.
Yeah. Well, here we are now. We've come a long way. We've gone through a couple of your books now, and now we're talking about a sort of new avenue for you.
Yeah, and a very exciting one. It's a whole different subject, and it was so interesting to do something that I just fell in love with. It was amazing. It was an amazing project.
We're going to talk all the way through it. We're going to talk about the differences between... We're going to talk about, obviously, the book Drinking French. As I say, a bit of a would you say a diversion from the typical...
Well, I'd say I write about French culture, and one of the main things about any culture that you write about, whether it's Australian, French, Italian, the thing that separates us or differentiates us, I should say, is food.
Right.
And French culture is specifically very interesting, not just because we live here, but because it explains so much about the people, why they are the way they are, how they live, and their history. So the subject became a lot. It's not just a bottle of booze. It's not a bottle of cognac. It talks a lot about the region, how these liquors are made, the laws. It talks about French bureaucracy. And so forth. So there's so much that I learned and so much that's very interesting. But you don't actually need, anyone who's been to France knows you go to a cafe and you have a coffee and there's about 20 things that are so interesting going on at that moment when you're standing at the counter with your little €1 cup.
Sure. Not even just like the language and the different, the different names for the different drinks. I had a coffee the other day, a little after, Apéritifs.
Oui, petit.
Yeah. Right. And I just read the bit in your book. What I like about Drinking French is it's not just recipes. It's not just cocktail book. It's got the signature David Lebovitz observations on life.
Well, there's so many stories. Like I said, there's so many stories to tell. Just going into a cafe and ordering a cup of coffee, and that moment where they're sort of gruff, but not really. It could be your neighborhood cafe and you sort of banter with the person. You have a relationship. Some people are reading the newspaper. Some people are eating breakfast or having a croissant. And the whole lifestyle to me is so fascinating. And we've both been here a while. But I really wanted to delve deeper into it. So this was my chance.
Yeah, I love it. And we're going to talk in depth about this, but it would be wrong of me to not discuss the 11th first.
Okay.
For several reasons. First, we're going through, this episode is the 11th of the 7th season of the Eiffel Tower.
Okay.
7 seasons, by the way. That's
how many episodes?
Well, who knows?
A couple hundred?
I think each season's about 20-25 episodes-ish.
Okay, are you the top Paris podcaster?
How do you define it, David?
That is probably up to some algorithm online.
I'd say I don't know. I think I've done the most episodes.
Okay,
and so most likely have the most downloads. But
there's a lot of good. There's you. There's Lindsay from Lost in Cheeseland.
Sure.
There's Forrest from 52 Martinis. There's a very good. You're part of a very great group of people.
I love it. I think it's great, and they're all friends of the show, I'm happy to say. And I think it's great that I think a lot of past guests on this show have started podcasts. Maybe you'll be the next one, David.
Okay.
But I think it's cool. It's a new way that people sort of seem to be spreading the word. And it's great to get to meet people. But back to the 11th. The 11th arrondissement. I just sort of want to gloss over it because I'm interested in your book today more than anything.
Okay.
But you know it fairly well.
Well, it's a huge arrondissement. It spans from the Place de République all the way to Père Lachaise Cemetery. So basically there's about probably 10 neighborhoods in this one neighborhood, which is sort of fascinating. Part of it's very trendy, or as you say, bobo, with young people wearing American sneakers and drinking natural wine. And the other part's sort of very residential, families with kids and so forth. So there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, I think people are confused by the 11th a little bit.
Well, part of it is across the street from the Marais. You walk across the street, you're on the Boulevard Beaumarchais.
Yeah.
So you're bordering that neighborhood, but you're also bordering Belleville, which is very multicultural, a lot of Asian people in restaurants, a lot of Middle Eastern people in restaurants and spice shops and so forth. So it's really a melting pot, the 11th.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's right between... Yeah, it's kind of like like those tie-dye T-shirts, right? Mm-hmm. And the way the colors all fade into each other. It's like the 11th is getting influenced by all the sides around it while trying to have its own personality.
That's true, although Paris is distinctly beige. Everything a lot of beige, so you don't have the colors so forth. When someone wears color, in France, it's like, wow, that person's very audacious.
Yeah. Or maybe American or something.
But now, it's interesting how many people are wearing sneakers. When I moved here, like, you didn't wear sneakers.
Yeah.
It was sort of, people did, but it was much more, and now I think 95% of people wear sneakers.
Yeah, that's true. And there are a lot of sneaker shops around as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like American, like NBA basketball sneaker shops as well. Like proper, like, anyway, we've gone off topic. The 11th, so in summary, it's a neighborhood of neighborhoods.
Yeah, and there's really interesting, there's a couple of great markets. There's the Bastille Market on Sunday and Thursday. There's the Popincourt Market. There's great little restaurants, cafes, wine bars, so forth.
I get emails sometimes from regular listeners to this show. It's happened more than once. Who say that they specifically went to markets hoping to see you there. Mm-hmm. Does that surprise you?
No, but sometimes it's kind of funny because people call my name and I say hello, and I kind of look at them for a moment because I'm like, I forgot that who is this person? And I think I met them maybe at a party, and then they're just a reader, which is very sweet and funny, but I always feel like they probably think I'm a little strange.
That's funny. That's interesting. I was in the Marais recently, and I was walking out, and some guy was sitting there on the terrace, and he just goes, the Eiffel Tower! And I turned around and I was like, what am I meant to do? He's just saying the name of the podcast, like I obviously haven't met him before.
Yeah.
So I turned around and I was like, yeah, hello? And he's like, I think he was I don't think he had anything to say. He just wanted to, so at least people were calling out your name.
I think he just wanted to probably note that he saw you and recognized you. And
so it's easy flattering. For me, like I knew he was listening to the show. For you, think maybe it could be a doctor or something.
Well, I have a friend who's very famous, and I said, he came to Paris once, and at the market, people were just swarming him. Right. And I actually didn't realize how famous he was.
Right.
And
Harrison Ford, was it?
No, but I worked with his son, who had the same smile. But I said to my friend, I said, is it hard for you? He goes, only when I'm having a fight with my wife in the airport and everyone's coming over to say hello.
Interesting. Wow.
So,
okay, well, there you go, everyone who was here for the 11th, but we're moving on now. I'm sure most people are here to hear about you and your book, Drinking French. So, David, if someone said, I don't need another cocktail book, what would you say?
Well, first of all, it's not a cocktail book.
Your face just...
Yeah. A lot of people are, they say, it's a book on cocktails because it's a cocktail on the cover. But actually, it's the whole range of French drinks. It's, begins with café drinks. So there's 3 hot chocolate recipes. There's café au lait, there's infusions, mint tea, all those mint syrup drinks that they have in France, pomegranate. Because people say, what's that green drink they're drinking?
Sure.
And like, it's a Montelot.
Yeah.
It's, mint water. Children drink mint milk, lait, menthe, which is kind of cute. It makes them feel like adults.
Yeah.
So that part of the, mint tea, Moroccan mint tea, all those drinks are in the book because they're such an important part of French drinks. And then it moves into lower alcohol spirits like apéritifs, such as beer, lillet, vermouth. And so for a lot of people are surprised because they think vermouth is Italian, but part of France was actually under the auspices. It was a duchy under the dukedom of Italy. So they have an amazing vermouth culture. And then of course there's cocktails, especially because a lot of Americans came to France during Prohibition to drink.
Interesting, I didn't know that.
Yeah, people couldn't drink, so they would take these boats. As soon as the boat pulled away from the U.S., the bar would open.
Wow.
And then they got wise to that, so they said you can't drink until there was like a 10-mile limit.
What, then you're in international waters?
Yeah, so the boat had to go. But a lot of Americans came here, and they set up bars. Harry's Bar was brought over piece by piece from the United States.
Sure. They invented the Bloody Mary or something down there. Or
it was called the Bucket of Blood.
Oh, really?
And the name got changed before it hit the States back because Bucket of Blood was a little too much. But that was actually a very interesting story, one that I explored in the book. The Bloody Mary there was a bartender and somebody gave him a bottle of vodka. a Russian person, and he had never tasted it because it wasn't that well known. He's like, how do I make this taste good? And so he added all this stuff, like tomato juice.
Yeah.
And in the U.S., they actually call tomato juice cocktail for that reason.
Really?
Because it was the base for that cocktail.
Wow, so you've gone deep into the world of drinks in France.
Well, that was the interesting thing about the book. You just think, oh, it's a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But in France, there's always stuff, it's just hot chocolate. It's like, well, actually, hot chocolate is because, Spanish Jews were expelled from Spain. They came up through the Basque region, and, they made chocolate in the middle of the night to make money for, to live on.
How are you doing all this research? Is it like, are you... how is it?
It's supposed to be a simple book.
But I mean, so let's just take hot chocolate as a random example. Is this... I knowing you a little bit, I imagine that over the years... you have a drink in France, you talk to Romain,
Yeah.
and I assume maybe he says, oh, there's a story behind there, like when there's a particularly French thing, and then you get on the internet or you start reading books, or...
Sometimes.
Yeah.
For this book, I traveled. I went to the Alps to go to Chartreuse. I went to Marseillon, where Noilly Prat vermouth is made. I went to Dolin Distillery, where they make vermouth as well. Because a lot of stuff people tell you is actually may not be the correct story to be polite.
Sure.
Especially liquor companies on their websites, they have a lot of information, and a lot of it is sort of their interpretation of events. But it's interesting to go to these places. As you know, in France, you go to a winery, and that's how you learn about wine.
Absolutely.
You don't do it from reading a book necessarily. You can, but if you go to Burgundy, all of a sudden you understand the wines.
Sure. If you want cognac, go to Cognac. That's what I say.
You go to Cognac and you can see them making it and talk to the people.
Yeah.
And then you appreciate it more. I mean, you can still appreciate it without going. But fortunately, I wanted to share all those stories. I didn't want to take a deep dive. It's not a history book.
No.
And subjects like wine... because when I was writing the book, people in France were like, oh, you have to mention rum. Oh, you need to mention, pastis. Oh, absinthe. And it's like, okay, everyone is, one book. Each of those things is a subject.
Right.
So I had to sort of decide what I wanted to sort of talk about and how much information people really needed. Wine, for example, as you know, wine is super important in France.
It's religion here.
Yeah, and it's not considered sort of alcohol. It's a drink. It's something you have with dinner. And people don't, a lot of Americans think, oh, French would never drink, cheap wine. I'm like, that's what they drink daily because it's,
Absolutely.
it's a normal, it's a beverage. It's not this thing necessarily that you worship.
I heard that in America, the prices of wine is like astronomical.
Yes.
Yeah, like if you're in, you're from San Francisco, right?
Yes.
So if you're in San Francisco and you're in a restaurant and you just get an average price glass of white wine, what are we talking there?
Well, San Francisco is different because it's very expensive.
That's okay.
Just in like a city in America, you're looking at probably $12 for a glass of wine, plus tax, plus tip.
Yeah.
So you have to add another, 20% for tip,
and
then 10%. So add 30% to that price. So you're looking at 15, 16, and that's the low end.
And that's for what you'd get for, 4 or 5 euros here or something?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
So in some place, that's an inexpensive glass. That's like a, glass of wine.
That's sick. When you go home, do you feel sick to pay those prices?
Well, what's interesting in America is a cocktail is actually cheaper than a glass of wine in a lot of places.
Wow.
And I've talked to restaurant owners. I'm like, I don't understand. I understand it's a lot about you have expenses, that it's not just the making of the drink, but you have to have a person standing there mixing the drink.
Yeah.
And usually liquor, hard liquor, like a bottle of bourbon is more expensive than a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Not always, but. And they said, it's just to make money.
Yeah.
And I understand that. It's just when I go with my partner to the U.S., he's like ordering all these glasses of wine. I'm like, you can't have 3 glasses of wine. It's going to be $100.
With a quick question on America, tipping 15, 20%, is that what they say?
20%.
20%?
Yeah.
Where did I get 15 from?
Probably from the wrong guidebook.
Okay.
Well, it depends where you are. Like in a city, you tip 20%.
Okay.
Generally, 15 is sort of the minimum.
So just shoot for 20 and everyone's happy.
Yeah, basically, I tell people just double the tax. Or I use it. I actually don't. When I go back to the U.S., I've totally forgotten the whole tip system, and I use an app and it just tells me what to leave, and I leave it.
Okay.
A lot of times the check will say also,
like suggested gratuity or whatever.
yeah. And I was actually at an airport recently in New York, and there was a thing in different languages about how to tip.
Interesting.
With the check.
Because I might be calling you from my road trip coming up with questions about tipping and stuff.
Okay.
Like that. Yeah, just to let you know.
Well, it's interesting. What's happening is tipping is becoming more common in France.
That's what I was going to bring this to. When you're in buying a cocktail or a coffee or something, would you tell people that they should be tipping?
Well, I asked a bar owner. I said, "Well, how did bartenders don't make a lot of money here like they do in America because you're making $2 or $3 at a cocktail." And I said, "How much do your bartenders make?" He said, "This is a hot bar." He said they probably bring home €20 a night in tips. Whereas in America, it'd be like, oh, well, you can't live on that.
I think, they kind of, people are surprised if you leave not that I'm going around leaving generous tips, but they'd be quite...
Well, it's hard to explain to people. Like in France, they're actually getting paid a living wage.
Yeah.
And they're getting benefits usually. If they're employed by their employer, they're getting those things. So it's not like they have to worry about those things. On the other hand, Paris is an expensive city. So people generally round up. I usually tip like €1 on a cocktail.
Right.
I always think it's okay to err on the side of being slightly too generous, but 5 to 10% is really, I think, the limit in France. It's not because you're being cheap. It's just that's the culture.
Yeah. Do you get asked about that a lot when people are emailing you?
I used to, and I had an angry person write to me once saying, you should leave 20% in France. And this person works here, so they said. The way they wrote to me made me believe that they were not French.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know any French person that would leave 20%.
No.
And not because they're cheap, but it's because that's the culture.
Maybe a celebrity. I don't know many French celebrities. Although I was at the Waxworks Museum recently.
Okay.
So I met a few. Anyway, back to your book. I want to know if there was a particular section that you especially enjoyed writing.
There's a whole chapter on homemade infusions, which are things you can make at home. You can make liqueurs, crèmes, you can make syrups with raspberry. You just need fruit. You can make raspberry, tarragon liquor, orange wine, elderflower wine, liquor, so forth. And those were really fun. Cherry guignolet, cherry liqueur. Anybody can make those anywhere. And I love transforming things. I love, I have all these jars all over my apartment with experiments. The one problem I had was those seasons are very short. So if you're making cherry liquor and you have to let it sit for 2 months, if you say, this needs more of this,
right.
You got to wait till next year. So you sort of have to plan ahead.
So are you quite experimentative when it comes to making drinks and food and that sort of stuff? Yeah.
It was interesting testing recipes for the book because when I write a book, I usually start working, 9 in the morning. When you're dealing with alcohol, it's a little tough to make a cocktail 4 or 5 times at 9:30 in the morning and taste it.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. Did you have a lot of your friends knew you were making cocktail books and would sort of drop by in the afternoons to?
No.
You didn't tell them afterwards?
No, I do have an assistant. It was interesting because I was the first person she told was that she was pregnant.
Ah, right.
Because she had to tell, she's younger, so she could handle, drinking cocktails more than I could. But she said, "I'm pregnant. I can't drink."
Because she didn't want to drink all
But often I would just put them in the refrigerator, like any cocktail that was good. Yeah. I would just stick the glass in the refrigerator, and then drink it when watch the clock until it was 6 or 7 o'clock.
What about, is that something in France that they don't? Because people have a glass of wine at lunch. It's very common here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I don't remember who it was, but I saw it on Twitter. Was one of the French ambassadors, maybe to the States, had commented that every day for 15 years he'd been having a glass of wine.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like a badge of honor in France, and it's part of they like to uphold their traditions, which are amazing and rightly so. So it's like, there was recently a famous chef here or chef in Paris that made a statement. It's like, I hate dry January. At first we had to get rid of having mistresses, and we had to, now we have to get rid of wine.
Yeah.
We need to stop this madness.
Yeah.
It was very French in a way.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't drink wine at lunch. There's this whole myth that everyone in France has a 5-hour lunch and they just sit and drink wine. As you know, most people now, they lead faster paced lives. They don't have a lot of time, so they don't have wine. I don't have wine for lunch a lot either. If we were going out, I might have a glass,
Sure.
but...
Do you ever eat on the go?
No. I actually, when I left the restaurant business, I said I'm never eating standing up again.
Right. That's the thing people say about Parisians is that they don't typically eat food on the go, except maybe the end of a baguette or something.
Yeah, I'm seeing it more and more. Once again, I live in the 11th. A lot of young people here, and they go to the restaurants. There's a big takeout culture now to get food or food delivered, like Deliveroo, Uber Eats. And so people go, and I see people carrying bags out of restaurants now or cafes, food to go.
Yeah. What do you think about the whole Deliveroo and everything taking over?
Well, it was interesting because Deliveroo gave me credit when it started because I was looking at the app and I saw one of my pictures on there from my blog. So I wrote to them and I said, "Oh, you're using one of my pictures."
As in a picture of food, or
yeah, it was a pizza.
Yeah.
So they kindly gave me a credit. Oftentimes places like somebody sends them a picture, they take it down. And it was, some of the stuff was very interesting. To get it was, some interesting restaurants. Now it's mostly hamburgers and pizza. And one thing I don't like what it's done to a lot of restaurants is they're spending so much time making food for these Deliveroo orders that they're neglecting the people in the dining room. So I've noticed certain restaurants have changed because they don't add staff, they don't have room.
Sure.
So I don't know, do you ever use them?
Seldom. I don't know. It was on the show recently talking to someone about when all the strikes were on, that it was the companies like Deliveroo that were winning out of it, whereas all the restaurants were empty. And that made me think a little bit. But often, I live in Montmartre where there's restaurants literally downstairs.
Well, also when it started, it was a lot of young French people doing the deliveries.
Yeah.
It was very interesting talking to them because they were eager, and you tipped them and they were super nice.
Yeah.
And then there was an article in the New York Times a few months ago that a lot of French people are now subcontracting that work out to people that are working for them doing the deliveries.
Ah, really?
So it's a different group of people. It's a very interesting article.
It's an interesting sort of ecosystem. I used to play basketball with a guy who was a bicycle driver for one of those companies, maybe Deliveroo, and he said that he was making a killing out of it because he was a demon on a bicycle. And he could do a lot of deliveries very quickly. And I don't know if it's the same, but he got paid per delivery.
Yeah.
So let's say €2 per delivery. And I remember saying, "Oh, that's not so great." He's like, "Do you know how many I can deliver in an hour?"
Okay.
And now I got my wage as well. So he was killing it. So I don't know. I saw one guy. I was on a metro the other day. This guy running up the stairs panting, and then turned around, changed direction, went the other way. And as he turned, he had a huge Deliveroo
thing.
backpack on.
Okay.
And I was like, the people ordering that food must feel guilty to know that the guy's just getting on the metro. Like, he's not even cycling.
Well, I think a lot of these things like Airbnb, Uber, and Deliveroo start off as really good ideas, and then people start using them differently or taking advantage of the situation and so forth. So all those things, like Airbnb is a great idea, but when certain cities are really hurting, and who wants, you don't want neighbors who are changing every 3 days.
Exactly. Well, Paris was sort of hurting. But anyway, we've gone way off topic there. I don't know how that happened. Time's sort of running away. So back to the book. Is there a recipe in there that you think you're particularly proud of, or that you think people should embrace?
Well, a lot of the drinks, of course, I love the drinks. There's a cocktail called the Boulevardier, which is funny because when I was, the book had been finished, it was at the printer. I started reading all these articles about the Boulevardier is the new it cocktail. And I'm like, it's the first cocktail in my book because it's my favorite cocktail.
Maybe that's what made it the it cocktail, the fact that you'd been showing interest in it.
But no one knew.
Got around.
No one knew except like 3 people at my publisher.
As soon as you tell your publisher, the word starts getting around. So what's this drink then? I never even heard of it. by the book?
Yeah. No. It's sometimes it's actually considered sort of the French version of the Negroni.
Yeah.
The Negroni is usually equal parts gin, sweet vermouth, and red bitter aperitif such as Campari. In France, the drink is actually made with the last two ingredients, but it's made with whiskey rather than gin. And it can be served up or on the rocks. And it's a wonderful cocktail because those three ingredients come together really well. I use Dolin red bitters, which is available in France. They make vermouth that's very well known in the US. But their red bitters are excellent. France has excellent vermouth, sweet vermouth, and whiskey. And sometimes I use American whiskey. There are a lot of French whiskeys out there now too. One thing a lot of people don't realize is the French are the largest consumers of whiskey in the world per capita.
That's amazing.
So it's a very big whiskey drinking culture.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of whiskey only stores. They love Scotch, whiskey
There's
single
a couple of
malt.
whiskey bars as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very into single malt Scotch.
Yeah.
Which is surprising to me because the French palate usually doesn't adapt, they don't eat things that are heavily smoked. But some of these, I love smoked food because I'm American. And some of these single malt whiskeys are I can't drink them. They're just too tourbé, as you say in French, or peaty. But everyone has their own likes and dislikes.
I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you don't like this.
Oh, okay.
But do you remember that time when I asked you for the whole alphabet of French food? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to ask you...
I thought you were going to ask me about promoting your book.
No, I'm not going to do it. We can talk about it. But I was going to say, is there a good bar to get a boulevardier that you could recommend me?
Well, I usually make them at home, but a really good Manhattan, which is sort of a riff, it's the same sort of genre, is at Red House, which is sort of a dive bar it's in the 11th.
I know it, yes.
Yeah, and it's a great, Joe Boley owns the bar, and he actually has a bar also in Pigalle called Sister Midnight.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah, which I haven't been to.
Okay.
But Jen, who is the bartender, who is his partner, she makes really good Manhattans. That's her specialty.
Okay, well, I'm going to do that. Maybe one day me, you, and Forrest Collins can go and have a Manhattan there.
Yeah.
I don't even think I've ever had a Manhattan before.
Well, you're going to be going to the U.S. on your book tour,
Yes.
so you should have some cocktails because they're cheap. You won't be able to drink. You won't be able to afford wine.
Yeah.
You can drink cocktails.
Forget the wine. But you're very kind to mention my book, and I want to stick with yours for a sec. Drinking French, everybody. If you haven't got out there and got it yet, do it. That's available online. I'll put all the links below as usual. But also, on a personal note, thank you for helping promote my own book. That was very kind of you.
Well, I was excited when I got this email popped up from you, and it wasn't asking me to be on the show. It was asking for something else. And you were asking people to buy your book.
Right.
And I'm actually very supportive of people doing new things because I was one of the early adapters of the internet. I was one of the first bloggers, and it's always exciting for people take their initiative, because a lot of people go, I can't write a book, I can't get it published. I'm like, publish it yourself. And it's very, that really means that you worked hard on it, and how much work if people could see your face right now, it's like, it was a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it was. I remember talking to you last time when we recorded from your apartment about your last book. I remember talking to you for like an hour or more afterwards about the publishing journey and how difficult it can be and everything.
Well, can you, I don't know if you want to say how many books you pre-sold, or did you make back your original investment in printing them?
Yeah. So what I did, I sold almost 500 copies.
Okay.
Pre-sale via Kickstarter, which is that's all closed now, so you can't find it. But it's.
But they can still buy it.
Of course,
through your website.
They know this already. Okay. But it's for anyone else listening who's thinking of self-publishing, it's a great way to see where your audience is.
Well, it is, but you also you've spent several years. This is your 7th season.
Yeah.
You spent a lot of time and given a lot of listeners things. I always tell people too, like, anything you do, like writing a book, doing a podcast, writing a blog, is about sharing, and you're engaging with people, and that's what you do really well. And you've built up this. Right now, everyone's listening and listens to you, and they like you a lot. So, it's very gratifying that they show their support by getting your book.
Yeah.
And I once asked an editor, I said, how do you know when a book is a success?
Yeah.
And she goes, when you pay back your advance.
Really?
So if you pay back your expenses, but you're going to be traveling around America.
Sure.
We should get a bus and, have a bar bus or something.
Like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Yeah. That's for another podcast episode. Thanks for all your kind words. And I see there's one of my lunch pack and Notre Dame's tote bag hanging over your shoulder. This just keeps getting better. Thanks for the support.
Product placement.
Thanks, no, but honestly, thanks for your support over the years, David. That means a lot to me. And forget my book, guys. Go and get Drinking French. It's a beautiful book. There's a copy of it right in front of me, and you're going to love it. David, thanks for being on the show again.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm always happy to talk to you.
There you have it. That was David Lebovitz. Check out his new book. But now I'm in the studio with regular voice on the show, Bertrand.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. You... when you did your intro bit, you said the 11th arrondissement, and you didn't say the 11e, because usually you say it in French afterwards.
C'est vrai.
And I wonder if you forgot how to say it in French.
I'll try then. 11e?
11e. But do you like the 11th?
I used to live in the 11th, so it's not that I like it, it's that I love it, and it's also that I miss it a bit.
Guess what? Me too.
Yeah.
Where did you live?
I lived on the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, just behind Bastille. So it's very south of the 11th.
I used to live on Fontaine-au-Roi.
Yes?
Yes.
We actually have our office just there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, Goncourt?
In between Goncourt and Belleville.
Well, we would have been right next to each other.
Street. Yeah. We go for lunch all the time on Fontaine-au-Roi.
There you go. So now, guys at home, you're not talking to us. Maybe they're talking to us, but you're listening to two dudes who know the 11th.
Yeah.
I used to call it the trendy 11th. Do you think that's fair?
It depends what you mean by trendy.
I don't know what I meant.
Because if you mean the Dior, the Chanel, etc.
No, that's not what I mean by trendy. No, that's not what I mean by trendy. I mean, where you, like hip young guys like you and me would be going out for a cocktail.
I would say that's the 10th.
Oh, God.
Okay. Were you here last week?
Yeah.
For me, the 11e, it's not so much the cocktails, it's more the alternative spirit. I want to make the world a better place. I want to eat organic. I want to fix my bike. I want to. It's also. I guess it's also because of the history of the 11e arrondissement, which was the arrondissement for craftsmen in Paris, and that's what I love in this place is that you can walk. I mean, it's mostly small, tiny one-way streets. You would think that why should I go there? But actually, you should go there to be surprised. Okay?
That's well said. I like that because it's not really touristy.
No, it's not touristy at all.
No.
It's not touristy at all. Once again, they start to be a few hotels like La Fabrique Hotel, but just the name of it, La Fabrique in French, Fabrique is not a piece of clothes. It's a factory.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a former factory, you now have a 4-star hotel on Rue de la Folie Méricourt, a very short name.
Cool street too.
Very cool street.
Yeah.
But what I like the most in that area is when you walk from the top of the 11th, let's say the Père Lachaise cemetery, okay, and you walk down all the way to Bastille, you can do this by crossing secret passages and courtyards where when you just push a door, you have this Paris of the craftsmen who've made the revolution of it's the guys who've taken the Bastille, it's the guys who've...
So when you say craftsmen, you mean like builders and plumbers and stuff like that? Is that what you
builders,
mean? Or
plumbers, a lot of carpenters, a lot of furniture makers.
Yeah, okay.
In French, we call them les ébénistes. The Faubourg Saint-Antoine, which is the area just behind the Bastille Square, is really where that was happening. And it's amazing because on the main streets, you find another Zara, another H&M, another Gap. But if you just pass the door, you still have a lot of craftsmen and artisans who, some of them are at the end of their career, thought that their job was dying after them.
Yeah.
And actually, that's why it's the maybe trendy or alternative neighborhood. You have a lot of young people who think, okay, I'm not going to work at the big bank. I'm going to do something with my hands.
Interesting. Yeah. And so when you say like push on a door, what do you mean by that?
Well, that's something you should do anywhere in Paris anyway, is always try to push a door because Paris is a city that for most of it lives within courtyards.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you don't know that, you're just going to walk in the streets and you're going to miss a lot. So during weekdays, And during business hours, it's usually very easy because in most Parisian buildings, you have at least one or two doctors or psychiatrists or whatever. All the buildings are mixed. It's housing and working spaces.
Sure.
So always try to push. There's usually a little button.
Like the main,
Yeah.
The main. So on a digicode, they're called. There's numbers 1 to 10 or 1 to 9, ABC, and then there's a sort of big circular one at the bottom.
Exactly.
So you just press that, and sometimes it opens. So if I press that,
most of the time it does.
during the day, right?
Or if you see someone walking out,
Yeah.
you just go.
Yeah. If you put on a balaclava and go at night, it's probably not the best idea.
Probably not, yes.
Do it during the day.
Yeah.
And then, so if you press it and you walk through, and if someone stops and says, "What are you doing here?" What are you meant to say?
No one will do that.
Interesting.
Or if that happens, you just say bonjour, and then you do some kind
Say
of sound.
bonjour. My name is Bertrand from My Private Paris. Send the complaints.
Please, yeah. I'll be happy to help you out, guys.
I'm glad that you say that because I have a similar mentality. I like to walk through, but I sometimes feel a little pang of guilt when I do it.
So that's an important thing to say because it's normal that you have that because you don't know what's the manner of people here in Paris. You have to know that these courtyards, you're not violating someone's private propriety, okay? If you push this button and the gate open, it's because you could have an appointment with the doctor, with the lawyer, with whatever, with whoever works there. And it's totally fine. People are used to that.
Cool.
Okay. You have to remember that for most of the Parisian history, the business, the public life was happening in the streets for sure, for the markets, but most of it was happening within these courtyards.
Yeah.
And all the ground floors are shops or workplace.
So where in the 11th is the best area to sort of find some of these cool courtyards?
So it depends the type of courtyards you would find. If you are looking for something a little bit industrial of the 1800s with the charm of this, like the Cour d'Amois or Passage Cheval Blanc, you have to walk around the Bastille. You leave from Bastille and you follow the Faubourg Saint-Antoine. But if you want to find something a little bit more rough, a little bit, it's really houses made of woods that are stuck in the back of a courtyard, etc. You start, you walk up and down the Oberkampf Street, especially at the upper part.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah. I'll take you there.
That would be cool. I'd love to do that. We should do it.
You can book a tour with me, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that. Do you do tours? I'm interested if you do tours for...
Yeah. It's a part where, since there's nothing of big tourist interest, it's not listed as such a tour, but instead we call it the Paris Local Experience.
Yeah, like a custom tour.
Yeah. And we take you to these kind of places.
Because that's what I imagine a lot of people who book tours want to go to see the Eiffel Tower or Versailles, and that's fine because they're the main things to see. Yeah. But it would strike me as unusual that people would seek out the 11th.
We usually have both.
Yeah.
If you're here in Paris for just a couple of days and it's your first time, obviously you want to see, the Louvre, Notre Dame, maybe Versailles. But if you're here for a second or third trip, or if you're here for 4 or 5 days, definitely you should go visit a little bit more the east of Paris.
There you go, guys. He's on My Private Paris if you want to check him out while we're talking. But as tradition states, Bertrand never comes into the studio without some kind of goodies.
Of course.
I see there's a twinkle in your eye. What does this mean?
It's a pastry.
A pastry?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're back to pastry.
And Bertrand alleges that these pastries and treats have some connection to the arrondissement. I don't know how tenuous these are getting. Is this true, or is this just like some donut that you said was...
Oliver, have I ever brought a donut or a Mars bar?
Not yet.
I know you compare my pastries to that, and I'm shocked.
It's how I define the size. Remember, we're in listener world here. You can't share a picture until afterwards.
So why don't you open it, and I'll explain what it is.
I love the way it's wrapped. I love when they do this. I should take a picture before I open it. It's in the shape of a pyramid.
Yeah. You know what they do that? Because they don't do that with all the pastries. They do that with the one where you want to remember, don't put anything on top of it, otherwise you're going to splash it.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do? I don't say this very often, but for people who support this show on Patreon, I've started doing this new thing. I don't know if I've sent it to you. I do show notes, detailed show notes with pictures. Pictures of things that I mention, during the episode, and that's where these pictures
it better be better than a donut.
Let's have a look.
Even though you will say it looks like. So I've told you the 11e
It looks
arrondissement.
exactly like a donut.
The 11e arrondissement.
It looks like a crusty donut.
I've told you it is the area for alternatives, and it's also the area where you find most people. Are people driving a car or riding a bike in the 11th arrondissement?
Yeah.
They're riding a bike.
They're riding a bike.
So I've brought you the bike pastry. It's called un Paris-Brest.
Paris-Brest.
Yes.
Now, Brest is a city in Brittany.
Exactly.
Far, far, far west of France.
At the very, very far west.
You know what's weird? In Belarus, at the very far west, there's a city called Brest as well, spelled the same. Brest.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Isn't Brest Litovsk or something like this?
I don't know.
Is it just Brest?
This is a show about, we're talking about the 11th arrondissement. Let's bring it back.
Yeah. Bring it back to that.
So it's going.
Paris-Brest is a cycling race.
I
You
didn't know
go
that.
Paris to Brest and Brest to Paris.
Okay.
And there was a pastry chef in the south of Paris who created a pastry for that cycling race. And so he shaped his pastry in
Like
the
a
shape.
donut.
Not like a donut.
Like a wheel.
Oh, you're such a beast.
So it's like to describe it.
It's my favorite
It
pastry.
does look nice, actually.
It's hazelnut cream in the shape, in the crust, in the shape of a bicycle wheel.
But for people at home, just to describe it, it is the same size and shape as a typical donut. It is size and shape.
Okay, if you're listening to this, you have the number one reason to travel to Paris. Come here, taste it with me,
Yeah.
and you will see it's not a donut.
But so it looks vaguely like a donut. But just.
So anything round looks like a donut
But,
to you.
I mean size. Okay, it looks like a small Big Mac, right? No, but okay, it's small.
I think I'm gonna go now.
No, let me just describe it. It's small and circular, and if you cut it in half lengthways, not from the top, and then is this the hazelnut cream on the inside that I see?
Yes.
Yep. And then it's been, is it small almonds on the top I can
Exactly.
see? And dusted with a fine sugary coating. And it's served here in a small sort of paper cardboard little box that was wrapped up in a pyramid. So it is really beautiful. I was just teasing you there.
I know.
But is it actually your favorite, the Paris-Brest?
Yes.
I've never tasted this. And usually, I think it's disgusting when people eat on a podcast because you don't want to hear people chewing.
Yeah.
So we'll eat it afterwards.
Ça marche.
But I'm going to take a picture to share with you all. But everybody, Bertrand from myprivateparis.com, custom tours, boutique tour agency. Go and see Paris with him and his team. But it's not going to be you next week.
No, I think Marie's back on the
Marie's
show.
back. She's
Yeah.
doing 12th.
So you'd better eat now. Huh?
Yeah. Well, we'll see how we go, I guess. I'll see you. I'll see you when I see you, I guess. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Salut.
I don't